Last year, I was a deacon. I was still in the seminary, and the seminarians during the summer had the opportunity to go to Indianapolis to the National Eucharistic Congress, which was a very powerful experience. Perhaps some of you even had the chance to go. There were 60,000 Catholics from around the country who came to Indianapolis to go to Mass and to do Eucharistic adoration and to listen to talks and to express their faith and their love for the Lord. But the Masses and the talks at the Congress took place in two different locations. One of them was the Indianapolis Convention Center, and then the other one was Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Indianapolis Colts play their games. And so throughout the entirety of the Congress, people, myself included, were walking back and forth between these two buildings. They were about a block apart from each other, and it was just a normal part of the day to go to Mass in one place and then walk across the way to a talk at the other place and then back. And part of that stretch was under a bridge. And under that bridge, I remember, were sitting each day homeless people who were begging for money. And for the first 2 days of this Congress, which lasted 5 days, I was walking back and forth between those two buildings, and I saw the people begging out of my peripheral vision, but I chose to ignore them and to just keep walking. I pretended that they weren't there because I had places to go. And to be fair, I had good places to go. I was like going to Mass or going to listen to a talk about my faith. And so I was like, no, I got to do this. And so I kind of pretended that these people didn't exist. And in that respect, I was behaving a lot like the rich man in the parable that Jesus tells us today. This rich man who wore purple garments, the most expensive linen in the ancient world, and dined sumptuously each day. And every day as he walked in and out of his home, stepped over and ignored the poor man Lazarus, who was laying at his doorstep, suffering, covered in sores. On the third day of the Congress, I actually remembered this parable that Jesus tells us today. And I realized that I was behaving like the rich man and that I had to do something different. And so what I decided to do was, during our lunch break, I decided to step away from my seminarian brothers who I was with. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go buy, whoever's out there today, I'm gonna go buy lunch for them. When I have the choice, I prefer to give people who are begging food, because I know that it's gonna be immediate material assistance that they can actually benefit from, and sometimes you don't know what they'll do with cash. So if I have the option, I like to give food when I can. So I thought to myself, yeah, I'm gonna go buy them food. So I walked over to the food trucks. They had a bunch of food trucks outside Lucas Oil Stadium. I saw that there were two men sitting out that day begging under the bridge. And so I bought 3 meals, one for myself and then one for each of these two guys. I took the first meal to the first man, and I went and knelt down and offered him the food. And he told me, I'm actually not that hungry. And I said, okay, but he said thank you, and he took the food, and I said a little prayer with him, and then I walked across, underneath the bridge to where this second man was. And the second man, who told me his name was Billy, he was hungry. And so he accepted the meal that I offered him, and I sat down, and Billy and I had lunch together. And we just, chatted for 20, 25 minutes. It wasn't long while we ate lunch. I asked him about his life, and he told me, the struggles he was going through and how he ended up on the streets begging for food. He told me that he was Christian, and then he told me some of the things he believed, and I thought to myself, I don't think that's Christian, but I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about that. I just listened. I just listened to Billy, and then at the end of our meal together, I asked him if we could pray together, and I prayed with him. And then I got up and I went on my way. I went back to the Congress. Well, the next day was the 4th day of the Congress, but it was my final day there because I was going to be leaving early to drive up to meet my family for the 1 week of family vacation that we get every summer, and that's very important to me. So on Saturday morning, I planned to go to Mass and then immediately get on the road to go be with my family. And so I woke up and I went to Mass in Lucas Oil Stadium. And Mass lasted way longer than I was anticipating. I was a little frustrated. I don't know if that's ever happened to anyone here. But it took a long time because, like 60,000 people are there. So I was late getting on the road, and I was a little frustrated. So I decided I was going to run from Lucas Oil Stadium to my car, which was parked like a mile away, so that I could get on the road quicker. And in order to get to my car, though, I had to cross underneath that bridge. And so I'm running, and I'm crossing under the bridge, and I see Billy there. And so I wave to Billy, and I say, "Goodbye, Billy, God bless you." And he calls out to me, and he says, stop, come here. And so I stopped, and I turned, and I approached Billy, and I knelt down to see what was going on, and Billy, he began to weep. And then he hugged me, and he said, he just kept saying, "Thank you. Thank you. I love you, man. Thank you so much." He hugged me for like 2 straight minutes. It was a little awkward because people were like walking by behind us. But as Billy was embracing me, it became evident to me that he was not thanking me because I had given him food. He was thanking me, and he was so moved because I had seen him. Because I had actually taken time to look into his eyes and to ask him his name and to respect his dignity. You know, he spent the most of his time every day being ignored by people who passed him by on the streets. And so the fact that myself, even in my selfishness and my reluctance, was able to even give him that gift, it was far more valuable to him than any amount of food or money actually would have been. The fact that I actually just saw him. One of the most radical things that we believe as Christians is that every single human person has infinite dignity. That every single human person, even the poorest and the most seemingly insignificant person, even Lazarus lying on our doorstep, is seen and known and loved by God, and therefore is worthy of being seen and known and loved by us. And that's what the rich man in the parable that we heard really got wrong. That's why he ended up in the eternal flames. It's not because he was rich. Wealth in and of itself is not the problem. But the rich man was so preoccupied with his own comfort and pleasure and riches, he was so trapped within the prison of his own ego that he didn't even see Lazarus. Lazarus just became an object in his way, whom he had to step over to get in and out of his house. And it's so crazy because all of us recognize, like when we hear this parable, it's so evident to us, yeah, obviously what the rich man did was wrong. Obviously he should have stopped and looked at Lazarus. Obviously he should have showed mercy and probably should have assisted Lazarus with his overabundance of material resources. It's easy for us to see that, and yet, you and I, we behave like that rich man almost every day of our lives. At least I know I do. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of things, but I'm guessing you're a lot like me, that it's really easy for you to become indifferent to the people in our lives. And I'm not just talking about the poor people who we find on the side of the road, although I am talking about them as well. I'm talking about everyone we encounter. We pass by Lazarus every single day. It might be a person at your work or at school. It might be the person checking out your groceries in the grocery store. It might be a member of your family who you live with, or even your spouse. It's so easy for us to just start to treat these people like objects in our way, to not see them, to not appreciate the mystery that is another human person standing before us. And all of us know what it feels like to be Lazarus. We know how terrible it is when other people don't see us and don't recognize our dignity and do treat us as objects to be used or discarded or just simply to be placed out of the way. And so I think that what the Lord Jesus is inviting us to do this week, friends, he's inviting us to look at Lazarus. He's inviting us to get out of our own egos, our own agendas, our own desire for comfort and pleasure, whatever it might be, and to actually see the beauty of the person in front of us, whoever it might be. To recognize that this individual person, whoever it might be in my life, is not an object, but a subject. A child of God, who, like me, desires to be seen and known and loved. So for example, like when you're at the grocery store and you're checking out your food and there's a person there helping you do that, it's really easy to just like have your AirPods in or just be on your phone and not even look at that person in the eye. And the relationship becomes completely transactional. Maybe Jesus is inviting us to actually like look up and smile and acknowledge the humanity of that person in front of us. Mother Teresa, she once said, every time you smile at someone, it is an action of love, a gift to that person. Because maybe that person is one of the millions of people in this world who is suffering from loneliness, precisely because so many of us are not seen and known and loved by others, and a smile or looking in their eye might actually give them a moment of hope, a moment of remembering that they actually do have dignity, despite what the world keeps insisting. Or maybe Lazarus is in your own home. Maybe he's one of your family members. I think it's really easy for us when we live in close quarters with people to start to treat them as objects in our way, okay? If someone is in the kitchen and I'm trying to get out of my way, dude. Like, this is so easy for us to do. But the Lord is inviting us to not behave like that, to really look and see the beauty and the mystery and the dignity of the person in front of us. C.S. Lewis, he once said this. He said, next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, the holiest object that will be presented to your senses is your neighbor. Next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, the holiest object that will be presented to your senses is your neighbor. And yet we so often forget that. We so often forget it, but it's true. And so the Lord, he's asking us to look at Lazarus and to see him this week. And I'm guessing that when I say that, some of you, like me, think to yourself, I don't know if I can. That's my heart. Our hearts become so hardened by sin and indifference, and we get used to treating people like objects in our selfishness. And so sometimes it can feel really difficult to actually try to start seeing the people in front of us. We have to kind of open our hearts and our minds, and sometimes that's difficult, which is why you are in exactly the right place this morning. Because what enables us to actually see the dignity and the beauty of the person in front of us is coming here and gazing upon that little piece of bread, which looks ordinary, which looks like it's not anything special, but which we know is actually the Lord. When we do that, when we practice that every week here at Mass or in Eucharistic adoration, we get better at seeing the person in front of us for who they really are. Not just an object, but a child of God, a mystery with infinite dignity, whom God has given to us as a gift.